everybody, my name is Elizabeth Howell. I am a senior in aeronautics at Embry-Riddle Prescott, and I have minors in space physics and aeronautical studies. I am really excited about this class, and I find this topic really interesting. I grew up in New Zealand, and in New Zealand, one of our biggest priorities is the environment and protecting it from invasive species, and also protecting our air. I learned to fly in New Zealand before I came to the States, so I know how New Zealand aviation continually speaks about and discusses solutions to the environmental impact that we inevitably still do have on our airspace down there. And New Zealand is one of the leading countries in promoting electric aircraft and other forms of saving our air down there. So, for this purpose, I decided to study the Air Quality Act of 1967. I have my references listed in below this video. And I also would just like to say I did use Chat GPT to help summarize those sources for me. Wasn't sure how to reference it perfectly, but I wanted to put that in there. So, I wanted to lead with excuse me. The purpose of the Air Quality Act of 1967 is pretty well straightforward. It says it in the title. It's for regulating air emissions. It authorized expanded studies into air pollutant emission inventories, ambient monitoring techniques, and control techniques. Basically everything about studying the environment, understanding how we affect it and how we can affect it in a less negative way. Contributing factors to this act were the growing concern about pollution. The 1960s was a big time in history where people actually started to think about their impact on the environment and how it's actually starting to show, and such as smog was starting to show in cities. Research was linking pollution to respiratory issues, and overall the effects of humans not caring about how they impact the environment are finally starting to show and are starting to become obvious as people are becoming more educated. So those were contributing factors to this act being made. So this act had some pretty good short-term impacts. Ultimately, the act itself didn't really do a whole lot, but it was a foundation. So its short-term impacts led to the creation of air quality control regions, impacts in U.S. public health and research into how the environment impacts our health. And ultimately, its short term wasn't much, but it was really a foundational framework for more long-term effects. So it had some good long-term impacts on the country. As I just want to say over and over again, the Air Quality Act didn't do a lot, but it was a foundation for a lot to be done. So it led to funding for environmental research. Obviously, the government has to make the decision of where money is going to go. So this act was very foundational in the government deciding to put money into studying the environment and our effects on it. It also led to national air quality standards that we'll kind of go into more in the evolution of the regulatory framework. So, as I said, it was foundational. So it led to a shift from state-led to federal-led efforts on environmental studies, just environmental protection in general. It led to the Clean Air Act of 1970, which did have a strong impact on protecting the environment in our country. It also led to the National Environmental Policy Act of 1970. Those go hand in hand. They work together. The Clean Air Act is a little bit more aviation related, obviously. And then it also led to the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency. Industries initially were not extremely thrilled about this act. It led to extra costs and needing to invest in environmentally friendly equipment. But it led to a lot in aviation really starting to shift their focus from just flying to flying at this time. Safety's a rising issue, so as they're working on improving safety in aviation, they're able to hand in hand improve the environmental impact instead of doing one and then having to change the effects they've done for one to also allow for the other. So hand in hand, they're starting to work together on things here. It also led to impacts outside of aviation. There are a lot of impacts on our air that are not caused by aviation. And one small example is this act was led towards the creation of the catalytic converters in vehicles to help make all vehicles more environmentally friendly in general. It also led towards the collaboration between government and industry research. So that's not just a government leading with an iron fist, industry's getting a hand in it, and they get to work together to figure out what works well for the industry, what doesn't just collapse air travel across the country because we can't afford this, or we're just going to shut down air travel to save the environment, what works well together for the ultimate goal of aviation is going to continue, but it's going to continue as safe and environmentally friendly as possible. And this led towards corporations working on having a good image in the public, so that the public obviously are the ones who started to care about the environment. What the public cares about, the government starts to care about, corporations start to care about, and they want to protect their image in the long run. So ultimately, in conclusion, the Air Quality Act in and of itself may not have done a lot initially, but it was a foundation for the country to make an entire shift away from just constant industrial evolution towards intelligent industrial evolution. Industrial evolution that leads into more environmentally friendly impacts, and hopefully cutting back enough to where we one day get good enough at protecting the environment so that we don't destroy